Hello and welcome to Take Me Home, the podcast offering a social democratic alternative for the politically homeless. My name is Sebastian Moore.
And I'm hilary.salt.
And today, this is a bit of a throwback in some ways because we're going to be talking about something that I spoke about on the very first episode of Take Me Home, which was...
The Chagos Islands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're going to be covering that?
Yes. Yeah, in particular, in the context of Trump's intervention on it and where we are now.
And I'm going to look a little bit at the ICE protests.
Okay.
They're not protesting against...
internal combustion engines.
Or against frozen water.
Okay. It's one of those three-letter acronyms. It stands for so much. It's very confusing.
These are the protests in America that are going on. And I know we're doing Trump again, but I think that I'm hoping that this has relevance to the UK's politics because I think it's all intertwined at the moment. So, where shall we begin?
Shall we start with Chagos?
Let's do it.
Yes. So, as you said, we've talked about this before. And this is the situation we have where we, the UK, are ceding our control and ownership of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. We're doing this not for free. We are effectively paying to do this. So we're going to pay them £100 million a year for 99 years to rent back Diego Garcia, which is where the base is, the military base is.
So again, 100 million for 99 years?
Correct.
It's about 10 billion. Is that right?
Well, there is allowing for things like discounting and everything. I think the number that people keep putting on this is about 35 billion.
Okay.
But as well as that amount of money, the leaseback thing, we are paying, I think, 45 million to Mauritius to help them do the integration and looking after the islands. And we're also paying 40 million a year to a trust fund for the Chagosians. So it is costing us an arm and a leg, you might say, to do this. Now, you might remember that the reason, and you went through this when we talked about it before, what this all came from was a International Court of Justice ruling that said that the Chagos Islands should be returned to Mauritius. Now, that ruling didn't really have any international standing. We weren't required to abide by it. But the government we have, I think Keir Starmer said something along the lines of, this is correcting hundreds of years of wrong, that kind of narrative. And Richard Hermer, the Attorney General...
Graham Stringer's best friend.
That's right, as we remember, said... we have to place international law at the centre of our foreign policy. So, they effectively are doing what they think is what they are required to do by this international body. Lots of people don't agree with them, including the Chagosians themselves. And there is now a Chagosian government in exile in the UK, which I think is a development since we last talked about it. So... why are we talking about this now? So really because of America's intervention on it. So America's been all over on this, to be honest. So I think back in 2024, Rubio said that, they thought this was a sensible thing to do. I think in 2025, when Starmer was in the Oval Office, I think Donald Trump said something along the lines of they agreed it was probably the right thing to do. But the thing that's changed very recently is that Donald Trump has said on, is it called Truth Social? I never know what it's called. Yes. That it's an act of great stupidity, in capitals, of course. So it's completely changed his mind. Now, a lot of people seem to think that because we've signed the treaty with Mauritius to do this, we're kind of tied into it. My understanding is we aren't, because that deal has to be ratified by Parliament. And it's been through the House of Commons and the House of Lords. I think it's back now with the House of Commons. The House of Lords had suggested some amendments that included, I think, some amendments on kind of transparency and what happens to the money if Mauritius doesn't do what we want it to do and those kind of things. And a couple of amendments on, well, what about shouldn't the Chagosians have some kind of a say in this? And I think that's quite interesting. Come back to that in a minute. So this bill this hasn't been passed yet. So I think we can still change our minds. I'm not quite sure if we wanted to just withdraw the bill altogether, what the kind of parliamentary system is to do that. But I'm quite sure that we aren't at this stage tied into it. Now, I guess two big questions are, why is America intervening now? And, what do we think about it? And I think it's quite hard to separate America's intervention from the whole Greenland discussion. Because if it's possible to just have an army base on an island without owning the whole country, then you might say, why does America need to own Greenland? So, it kind of raises that question. So I think part of Trump's intervention is saying, oh, no, you need to own the whole place, because that's what we're saying we need to do in Greenland. So I think those issues are a bit mixed up. I'm not sure his intervention is a purely Chagosian based one. I think it is a wider one. But the second thing I think is, what are the principles here? What are the principles that we should be thinking about? And to me, there's two that are important. One is the whole idea of sovereignty and national self-determination of a nation. And that's where it seems absolutely bonkers that nobody's asked the Chagosians what they think. And we certainly know what a lot of the Chagosians think, which is that either it should remain with Britain or that it shouldn't be given to Mauritius.
Well, I went to an event in Manchester that I told you about, which was organised in part by the Chagosian community up here, alongside this organisation called the Friends of the British Overseas Territories.
Yes.
FOBOT. And it was absolutely shocking to me to go and be in a room where I'm pretty much amongst a handful of white people in a room of hundreds and hundreds of Chagosians, and they're all brandishing these the flag of what's known as the British Indian Ocean Territory.
Yes, yeah.
The reason it's called the British Indian Ocean Territory and we don't just say the Chagos Islands is that previously it had different parts that were ceded to the Seychelles maybe in the 60s or so. So now the British Indian Ocean Territory is made up solely of the Chagos Islands. Mm-hmm. But they've got this amazing flag, if you've ever seen it. It's wonderful, with a Union Jack on it. And it was amazing to see them so sort of, they're patriotic, despite the fact that they've been left by the British government. They're saying that the Britons should have sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, and we should be able to have a say in that.
Yep.
And it's like they're left on their own to be patriotic.
Yeah.
That seemed incredible to me.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. But, when everything's kind of up in the air at the moment in terms of sovereignty and nationhood, it seems to me that one of the principles that is really important is always the self-determination of a nation of citizens, even if they are spread out over the world. And also, the idea that a sovereign nation should retain that sovereignty, which kind of spills over into the Greenland argument, doesn't it?
Yeah. So tell me what you think about Greenland then.
Well, just before we go on to Greenland, I think the other thing that's really important here, and that just doesn't seem to have been discussed at all in any of the discussion, is what's in Britain's national self-interest.
Well, this is what I was going to do.
Yeah,
which
I suppose that does lead on to Greenland as well, doesn't it? So we seem to be talking about all this as if, it's either some external court that decides it, or it's some other country. We'll wait to see what Donald Trump tells us to do, or it's something that is decided in smoke-filled rooms. They're probably not smoke-filled these days, are they? But, behind closed doors. And actually a proper discussion about what do we think is in our national interest is wholly missing from that debate. And as probably you were maybe leading on to, that is also missing from the debate about Greenland, isn't it? So in Greenland, we're talking about what does NATO require? What does America want? What does everybody else want? And that kind of feels to me a bit of that we're abandoning our duty to think about what's right for the UK. And that has to be a kind of realpolitik answer as to what's right for the UK, which has to be grounded in things like, to what extent can we control our borders? It kind of feels like we can't do that. So the idea that we might be able to defend somebody else's borders seems a bit aspirational. So that feels to me the really missing link from a lot of these discussions is, what is Britain's national interest here?
Right. So perhaps, I said this to a friend this week, perhaps our national interest would be something like, we have a really good opportunity here in between Denmark and the US, right, in negotiations, to play a blinder and actually come out with sovereignty ourselves of Greenland. You know, we could take the island over. Nobody's questioning that. Like, nobody's thought that as a possibility. And, you know, people might be against it, sure. But wouldn't it be interesting if that was part of the conversation of, like, wouldn't it be exciting to see Keir Starmer come out and say, and to speak in the national interest in a similar way to what Donald Trump does?
Yeah.
Because you can disagree with what Donald Trump's doing, but so much of his argument is founded upon this idea that he's acting in the interests of America.
Yeah.
Right? And all that's happening at the moment, in my eyes, is it is shining a light on the fact that we have come to rely so heavily on America that if they were to act in their own interests at some point, suddenly we'd be in a real pickle.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've talked before about, if you remember, with Tara McCormack,
we did
an interview with her where she said we can't even launch our own nuclear weapons without the Americans.
Yeah.
So we need to really start reevaluating our own foreign policy to actually think about what's in the best interests of our citizens.
Agreed.
Right? And I say the Greenland thing is a little bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you've got to put that on the table so that it gets us thinking in the right terms of what's in our best interests.
Yes.
And somebody might say, and you tell me what you think of this, but somebody might say, isn't that a selfish world where people are only thinking about themselves? You know, countries are only considering what's best for them. And what happens when you get a country like Denmark that's smaller, less militarily capable? Do we just leave them out to dry?
And I would say the answer to that is we can only really know what is right for ourselves. And there's a whole litany of examples of countries intervening abroad to help the people of that foreign country that have gone disastrously wrong. So intervening on behalf of people in another country, I think, is always, to me, kind of fraught with, nervousness and worry that actually, how can we know what is right for another country? It's only when you have a sovereign nation that has a democratic way of understanding what its citizens want that you can know what's right for that country.
Right.
And I think all these things feed back together: democracy, self-determination, sovereignty. These are all things that we've just forgotten how to do.
Yeah.
And we need to reinvent.
And a lot of the people that are fervently anti-Trump, and let's say the liberals or the liberal classes, the media and so forth, they are coming out and defending Denmark, which, if you think about it in another context, they'd be upset with Denmark holding territory that's far away from its own mainland.
Yeah.
And what they would normally be advocating self-determination for the Greenlanders themselves.
Yeah.
And as you know, because I think this is weird, I think this came up in a previous podcast a long, long time back, how we were talking about the politics of Greenland. And
yes.
Do you remember this?
Well, yeah. Can't remember why.
The political parties in Greenland, they have a certain autonomy. And really the only things that are controlled by Denmark are foreign policy and defence. And the overarching difference between the parties in Greenland is that some of them say they want independence now, and some of them say we need a path to independence. But the overwhelming majority of the Greenland Parliament is represented by parties that are advocating independence from Denmark in the first place.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And you told me what they called themselves, didn't you? The Greenlanders. There's a special...
The Kalalit, which
Yeah.
I think it just means people in the Inuit language,
Okay.
which I love.
Yeah, that's
It's
great.
like just people.
Yeah.
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 Or the slang term Kalak, maybe.
Okay.
But if we've got any Greenlandic listeners,
let us know.
please tell us if we've gone wrong.
Just finally, tying that back to Chagos, because when Keir Starmer was talking about, it being the right thing to do to pass over the ownership of the islands to Mauritius, he's kind of talking about that as if it's an anti-colonial thing to do. But surely, that's what we used to do in the olden days. We used to take a map and we used to draw lines and we used to say that's yours and that's ours. That's massively colonial, isn't it? And yet how can he say that's anti-colonialist?
Yeah, and it feels to me, and I think a lot of the people on our side of this issue that are perhaps, I would say, a little bit more measured when we look at history and recognise the nuances, would say that a lot of the anti-colonial thing is an attempt for two wrongs to make a right.
Yeah.
So they're trying to repair history by doing things, but then they're just causing more problems.
Correct.
And finally then, just on a slightly more of a point about the national interest and how we should be thinking about it. I think some people might think that we're saying we should be isolationist because we only care about ourselves, like put up the walls. And I think the national interest has to be a conversation about, so we can have relationships with other countries, but all of those relationships should tie into the national interest.
Yes.
Because if they don't tie into the national interest, they're not strong relationships and they won't last the test of time because the population will vote out the leaders that have made those agreements in the first place.
Yeah.
So in the case of Denmark, Greenland, and the US, we can allow ourselves to Denmark like Starmer is doing, but unless there's a really key plan, all you're going to do is be shouting about international law up until the point that Trump takes Greenland.
Yeah.
And then what have we got out of it anyway? What was the point of all that? You were just virtue signalling.
Yeah. And all those things we used to be really good at, like soft power. We need to reinvent all that, don't we?
Yeah.
So that's Chagos,
Okay.
part 2. Who knows where this goes from here? I really don't know where it goes from here, but interesting thing to keep an eye on, I would say.
Okay, ICE protests.
Yes, so you've talked about the Liberals once already, aren't you? They're in meltdown over all this, aren't they?
Puns about
ICE. Dear.
Good.
Yes.
I liked, to be fair, some of the protesters, they had some signs. I think it was something like Minnesota can handle a little bit of ice or something like that. And I thought, if you're going to protest,
have a decent,
well. Yeah,
have a decent placard.
So, okay, where do you start with something like this? As you know, there's been a big crackdown by ICE on illegal immigration. There was 2 weeks ago today, I believe, the 7th of January, Renee Nicole Good, a citizen in Minneapolis, was shot and killed by an ICE officer. Do you know what ICE stands for?
Immigration. No.
Do you know, I wonder how many people that are really upset about this and posting about it even know what it stands for, but Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Okay.
So it's a federal agency, and obviously the US system works differently to the UK, and a lot of police will be state police.
Yeah.
Whereas they have, ICE is a federal agency, like I think the DEA is a federal agency, and the Customs and Border Protection, that's another one. There's loads of federal agencies. So I don't know if listeners will have watched the video of, because there's many different camera angles.
I haven't.
You haven't?
No, I can't watch anything like that. I can't watch, Tom and Jerry, where the cat gets hit by a frying pan. I can't watch something like that. I'm very poor.
Okay. Crikey. It's not too bad, to be honest, in terms of, I've seen worse videos out there on the internet. Because you don't see much of the nasty part of it. But essentially, Renee Good and her partner are interacting with ICE agents, and Renee is in the driver's seat of her car.
And she's part of a demonstration, isn't she, against ICE?
Yeah, it's a bit, I suppose it's a bit complicated. Supposedly, the ICE agents are on their way back from particular
exercise,
let's say, yeah. And they come across this car parked diagonally in the street, as sort of blocking their way. That's the way I think it started. But the video shows that there's been quite a lot of interaction up until that point because they're in conversation. And anyway, the key part of the video is that there's a shot of and you can see this of first, I don't want to say first person, but you can see it from sort of the police officer's perspective, the ICE officer looking towards the car. And then you can see it from the other angle as well. So you get a good angle on this. But at one point, they ask her to step out the car and she drives straight into the ICE officer and away. As she does that, he fires on her and kills her. So if you remember a while back, and I think it was probably the second episode we did of Take Me Home, there's a lot of self-referencing going on today. We talked about a case with Chris Cabba.
Yep.
Who had, I think he'd pulled the gun out, maybe shot somebody in a nightclub and then was being chased by police and he drove into a police officer and the police officer shot. I think that is so different to what happened with Renee Good, particularly because of the threat that Chris Cabba offered.
Yes.
Offer a threat.
Yeah.
Whereas Renee Good was clearly, I think if you watch the video, a nuisance, very annoying, but there is, I think, law enforcement officers watching that would say that if somebody there ends up dead, something's gone very wrong, and the law enforcement officers have done a really bad job, because there's no reason why an incident like that should end up in the death of somebody. Now, somebody might say she drove into him. The car is a weapon.
Yeah, weaponising the car
with Chris Cabba. I think it's very, very different in this incident.
Okay.
Chris Cabba was much more head on. The Renee Good one, he's by the side of the vehicle or by the front side, and he does get hit. You can see that it hits him, but he very much sort of jumps out the way. So he jumps out the way. You then see videos later of that particular officer walking around and he looks fine, right? And I know that's sort of quite anecdotal in a way, but I really don't think there was that much severity in what happened. And perhaps he's fired, spontaneously.
Yeah.
But then he's a trained law enforcement officer. He should be able to deal with that situation much better.
So two things there. One is that they've been recruited very quickly, haven't they? So how much training they have, I think, is a bit of a question mark over that.
Yeah.
And is he a law enforcement officer?
Yes. Yeah.
He's not a police officer,
no,
is he?
No, not a police officer, but ICE are part of law enforcement.
Okay.
So the Immigration and Customs Enforcement is enforcing the law.
Okay.
Now, one of the big misunderstandings with a lot of what's happening with ICE is that people think they need a warrant. Now, you don't need a warrant for a civil arrest. These are not criminal arrests unless somebody has committed a crime.
Okay.
They are, and when I say a crime, murdering somebody, stealing something.
Yeah, not just overstaying your visa.
Not just overstaying a visa or illegally entering the country.
Okay.
Those are civil arrests. That's part of civil law.
Okay.
And for that, you don't need a warrant. Now, there are some incidents where ICE have entered hospitals and places to apprehend somebody. ICE says that they do that very rarely, and it's only under certain circumstances when there's a flight risk. Yeah. Now, ICE themselves, they produce administrative warrants themselves. So it's not, a judge doesn't give that warrant like they would with a criminal arrest. You have to get a warrant from a judge. So it's very different in that sense, criminal and civil law.
Okay.
There's been a lot of protests since the Renee Good, and there's been protests ever since Trump got back into power a year ago. Yeah. But these have heated up massively. And what it's doing is it's throwing this potential civil unrest, civil conflict right to the fore. And it's something that we've talked about a lot. I think it's the number one issue in politics is this idea that there's a potential civil war coming, with people becoming further and further to one side of an issue.
Polarised,
Further polarised.
Yeah.
And the people that are protesting and the Democrats, the politicians that I would say are very much encouraging them through some of the dialogue and the discourse, they are acting in what they think is in the most moral way. And they see this as something that's akin to Nazi Germany, with rounding up people that don't look like them, rounding up people with brown skin. And you have to take that for what it is and sort of assess it on its own merit and say, okay, is that happening? And is it like Nazi Germany? I think historical comparisons are always a way of creating unnecessary emotion within an argument.
Yes.
You can compare something historically, but you shouldn't need to compare it historically to make your point.
Yeah.
So, for example, if something were happening that really was Nazi Germany or worse, I wouldn't need to say, oh, this is similar to Nazi Germany for it to be a bad thing. I could make my case without that. It's fine referencing it, but I think often that's a way of adding unnecessary emotion into it. And I know that people are on that side of the issue and are really scared of the ICE stuff. They really believe, well, a lot of them really believe in it is as bad as Nazi Germany. I think when you look into each of the cases, there is more nuance.
Yeah.
Having said that, there are plenty of cases where I think ICE are acting in a way that I wouldn't want law enforcement to act. Now, that is in an American context. If you look at the police in America compared to the UK, police in America are far more aggressive, far more violent. Immediately holding a gun at a person in a driver's seat saying, get out of the vehicle. You've seen plenty of video evidence for that because they're worried that the person inside the vehicle might have a gun.
Yeah,
One of the nice things, regardless of what you think about it, of not having not having massive gun ownership in the UK is the fact that police officers can be a lot more relaxed and a lot more kind and friendly.
Yeah.
And so I do think that ICE are acting in a way it's potentially deliberate to try and drive this wedge into the argument and to separate the two sides, because I think Trump has shown this a lot. Trump is in many ways a necessary, call him a necessary evil. Like, I think Trump is really highlighting some of the frailties of our system. But Trump has shown the whole time that he's not interested in winning over the whole of the population. He's interested in speaking to his group, which he hopes is more than half of the population, obviously, so to have electoral success.
Yes.
But he's not interested in appeasing those on that side. And that's where I'm a little bit more uncomfortable with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what you might say about ICE is that it does feel, to me at least, I mean, looking from the outside in, really, that a lot of what they do is very kind of performative and it's meant to keep the right happy.
Yeah.
And so, maybe to some extent there is an element where you just have to say, well, that's kind of what is happening in the country to keep the people who are the most vociferous about this on side, which is fine when they're kind of just being a bit cocky and annoying. But when they're actually shooting people who are innocent of any crime, that's not just performative, is it? That is really problematic.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel that there does need to be a holding to account of ICE operatives, whereas at the same time there needs to be an acceptance that they are doing something that is mandated by an administration that has a democratic mandate.
Yeah, I think there's a much higher threshold for investigating a police officer's actions or law enforcement agent's actions in America than there is in the UK. So the example of Rene Good, he's not under a criminal investigation, which I think he probably should be.
Yeah.
But a lot of in America, there is this context of very high support for the police, and they think the police should be defended and shouldn't be put on trial for various things. I think there could be a light investigation, something that just establishes is there a course for criminally investigating.
Yeah.
I think that would be reasonable. And certainly just to say, is this the sort of person we want working for law enforcement?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Which comes back to that thing, doesn't it? That a lot of these people have been recruited quite quickly, and maybe they haven't gone through the right vetting procedures. Maybe they haven't been thoroughly trained, which is not a million miles away from some of the discussions we've got with the police force in the UK. True.
I think that the problem is social media and the way that we get our information does cloud it. So I think there are some misapprehensions, misunderstandings. I started in 2003, and it was a response to 9/11 in many ways.
Right.
So it's been around for a long time, over 20 years. And there isn't a massive increase in the activity. A lot of it is the way the media are covering it.
Okay.
So, for example, I thought I'd go through some of the stats of illegal immigrants in the US.
Okay.
Roughly how many illegal immigrants do you think there are in the US?
No idea. 10 million.
Wow, 10 million.
Yeah.
It's correct.
Is it?
Yeah, 10 million. Roughly 10 million. Very hard to know the exact figures, but generally when there have been studies into this, they all seem to be around the 10 million mark.
Okay. That was a complete guess, by the way. That was a fluke.
What percentage of those do you think entered the country illegally?
20%?
55%.
Oh, wow. A lot more than I thought.
45% is visa issues, whether they've overstayed or they've got the wrong visa.
I'm judging it perhaps by UK standards, where in the UK, most illegal immigrants are not people came over on boats. Yes. They are people who've overstayed visas.
Yeah, and there's one big difference.
We're an island.
Yeah. So America, the border is so porous.
Okay.
There is much more illegal immigration that's coming over the Mexican border. Now, those crossings have decreased a lot, actually, since Trump got into power. But anyway, around half of those illegal immigrants live in just 5 states. Florida, Texas, California, New York, and Illinois.
Okay.
So the big cities.
Yeah.
Most illegal immigrants live in big cities.
Yeah.
Urban areas.
Yeah.
And if you think about Illinois, where Chicago is, and the others are big states, New York, Los Angeles, Anyway, deportations then, and this is somewhat harder to measure because there's a lot of policy changes adapt the way that somebody's considered to have been deported. And earlier administrations like Clinton and Bush, they considered people that were turned away at the border as to be a deportation.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
it's hard to get exact data. But just on Obama, how many people do you think he deported during his time?
Million?
5 million.
Oh, wow.
And he was actually, I think Trump said this, he termed him the deporter in chief. I'm not sure if it was Trump, but...
Okay.
Because it's, again, a relatively unknown thing that Obama deported an awful lot of people.
Yeah, okay.
Trump's first term?
3 million?
2 million.
Okay.
So he deported fewer people than Obama did. Biden, 4.5 million.
Oh, gosh, right, okay.
And Trump, in this first year of this term, 600,000.
Okay.
That's the data I have. No, people can can find their own data. That's the best I've managed to find. But you can see that it's once you look into the numbers, the picture becomes a little bit more nuanced, and you realise a lot of it is performative.
Yeah,
like you were saying.
Yeah,
some of the stuff that they put on the Homeland Security Twitter account or the White House Twitter account is crazy because they're celebrating it of every person they deport and cheering it on because they are appealing to that the base that wants to see people deported.
Yeah.
Emily Maitlis. I'm just checking. It is Emily Maitlis now. I've got that right. News agents.
Yes, that's one. Yeah.
I saw a video of her this morning that she saw a deportation flight and she was shocked and just beside herself. She said she'll never forget this sight. And I thought that's weird to me because those people on board, unless you believe them to be US citizens or actually legally entitled to stay, they are people that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
They are, by their nature, illegal immigrants.
Yes.
A lot of people don't like the term illegal immigrants, unauthorised immigrants, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to be in the country.
Yeah.
They're being deported. And it's part of this liberal bias. It's like, I think they reveal their bias, that they assume that every country that they're being deported to is some sort of hellhole.
Yes.
Right? Where they're going to be murdered immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, what was I leaning towards then?
You were doing the numbers game. You were saying, and Trump's actually no.
So for me, a lot of it's performative, but the politicians are responding to the electorate and vice versa.
Yeah.
So it creates this scene where Democrats and the liberals in America are defending the country in their eyes from fascism.
Okay, yeah.
And then on the other side, you have people that think these people are rapists, murderers, and criminals, and Trump and law enforcement are legally trying to preserve the peace and protect people.
Yeah.
And then liberals who don't care about people being raped and murdered are preventing that. I'm just...
That's what they're saying.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Okay.
Now, when you have that discourse, that dialogue, it reaches a boiling point where we are going to see more civil unrest.
Yeah.
And I do think we could get to a point where there would be massive amount of conflict within states where state police might end up clashing with federal police. And that sort of thing, I don't know if you remember the Catalonia independence referendum.
Yeah, I do.
Where the local police were there were reports of them stepping aside because old ladies were being thrown out of voting booths by the national police. And we're not far away from something like that erupting. We have to be wary of it. What should we do?
Yes,
as people that are somewhat removed because we're thousands of miles away from this, but also as people that are within politics and talking about these issues.
And our issues in the UK are not a million miles away, are they? There's a whole deportation discussion and
exactly,
discussion around how do we defend our borders? How far can we go to do that?
Here's my suggestion for us and for everybody out there. Give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Assume the best intentions of the person you're talking to and arguing with, because they are most likely a decent person that cares about other people. Whether they're on the right, whether they're on the left, whether they're liberal, conservative, whatever, assume the best of intentions and work from there.
Yeah.
Right? And stop trying to take people out of context. People on the left, or the quote-unquote left, I think have to understand that the people on the right they're not in favour of fascism, right? They don't think this is fascism.
Yeah.
Right? They are in favour of the law being applied, of people being protected, etc. The people on the right, you have to understand that the people on the left are decent people that think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And there has to be dialogue. We talked a lot about Charlie Kirk and his assassination last year. I can't remember the exact quote of his, but something like the problems start when people stop talking.
Yes,
I'm getting more and more worried that people are just deciding it's not worth having those conversations with somebody who disagrees.
Yeah, and it's that kind of people jump up, ratchet everything up, don't they? So particularly on the deportation arguments here, you notice that, everyone's trying to get one step ahead of everybody else, and it gets things pushed to a level where I start to feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, because, and that's the social media infrastructure.
Yeah.
It rewards people that are saying the more extreme things. Because that's what we want to see, right? We want to go on the internet and see the extreme things. Yeah. So it rewards people that are posting something that's outflanking their competitors within the market of ideas.
Yes.
And we've got to remain more nuanced and more reasonable.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, in that spirit, if you are listening to this and you think,
they're talking rubbish.
Yeah, I completely disagree. Sebastian's saying some complete nonsense. Then leave a comment.
Yes,
or send an
please
email.
Do. Yeah.
And I'll do my best to respond genuinely and with utmost nuance.
Great. So thanks everybody for listening. That's another week's news episode in our new temporary home with our new equipment, which we're still getting used to. We are going to take the leap next week and do an episode with a guest.
Very good.
We will see you then.
Thanks for listening.